this is the war memorial. There it is there. It's called the Benwhat, Benwhat War Memorial. And that's located in this area of the country. There it is, that red bit there, just outside Dalmellington, up on a hill. And you can see Benwhat. You can see that from the road that runs between Castle Douglas and Ayr, the A713. And it's just a very distant speck from the road. But we decided to go up and have a close look at it, and very glad that we did. Now, Benwhat was a pit village, which is no longer there. And what's remarkable here is that this little pit village sent their sons off to fight in 1914. And it says there, Benwhat, 1921, erected by the people of this village with pride and affection to the memory of their gallant sons, who laid down their lives for their king and country in the Great War, 1914 to 1919. And you see that on quite a few war memorials. They add in an extra year. And I wonder if that's because maybe a man died as a consequence of injuries after the end of the war, which was, of course, 11th of November 1918. Greater love hath no man than this, it says there. I'll just take the pictures off for a moment. And it's really quite remarkable, because when you think about it, these men in that pit village would have a really hard life, And, they wouldn't even have the vote. Very possibly they wouldn't have the vote. Now, the vote for all men wasn't until the Representation of the People Act in 1918. It had been, however, extended, and many miners did have the vote. In fact, miners had the vote more than normal working class people, because the vote depended upon the rateable value of the premises that they lived in. And quite a few miners would live in miners' cottages. And so I was looking into this, and in England, there's about 70 in England and Wales. Wales had the highest rate of miners voting by the onset of 1914. 75% of miners lived and paid rent to a sufficiently high level that they got the vote as a consequence of that. In Scotland, the cottages tended to be smaller, and fewer miners paid sufficient amount. And it was about 50% of miners in Scotland had the vote. So whether any of these men who sacrificed even had the vote is questionable. And so they weren't doing it for some notion of saving democracy or something like that. They were doing it as it actually says there on that picture. Let's put that same one up again. They were doing it simply for king and country. Pride and affection to the memory of their gallant sons who laid down their lives for their king and country. And they were doing it out of a sense of duty, a duty to what they saw as their king and country, and also their fellows throughout the country. And there we see there's 12 names on this memorial from the men of this tiny little village out there in the remote hills of the Doon Valley, and you'll see there's 2 Nevilles, 2 Parkers, and 2 Wilsons. Well, who were they? Were they brothers, husbands, father and son? Who knows? But it's probably 3 families there who have been directly impacted. Okay. And there's the other names, the other 6 names from World War One. Somebody there in the Seaforth Highlanders, the others in the Royal Scots Fusiliers. Okay, and it didn't stop, because by the time of the Second War, there was 3 men who died, 2 in the Gordon Highlanders and 1 had joined the Black Watch. Okay. Quite pleased with that picture that I took. That's looking over behind, you can't see it, but behind the railings there is Dalmellington down in the bottom of the valley. And that's looking out. That's another good shot. That's looking out over towards Ayr, and you can just see the coast. And that'd be Arran. So this is down into Benwhat. This is what's left of the wee village that's down there. It's my mum and dad. Okay. That's another angle of the cottages. So you can see they're just small cottages, obviously. These look like the outhouses of the cottages. And that's further up. That's further up. That's Patna. Visited a grave of one of my ancestors at the bottom there at Patna Cemetery, and then climbed up the hill here to take that picture of the Patna Memorial overlooking Patna, which was a mining village.